Welcome to LT Vegan Living. My name is Gary, and what we're doing is we're going to be making another bread in our bread maker. This is my second attempt at making buckwheat bread. The first time I did, I followed a recipe that I add in my Oster book. Now my wife loved it, but to me it felt a little bit grainy. It felt like sandpaper bread. It was good with jam and butter, but it just was very, very rough bread. So instead of following the exact recipe that they had, I'm changing it a little bit. This is basically an Oster bread maker, very easy to use. I got this one about 10, 11 years ago for a present, and we've been using it on and off. And like all bread makers, it got pushed back all the way at the end of our cupboard, and we forgot it for 10 years. I'm using it again so that I can show you that you yourself can make delicious bread, easy to do. You can almost just walk away from it. This bread will take about 3 hours, but let's get started. A side note. Most of you know I'm moving. I'm moving out of this beautiful home into a much smaller home. That being said, I haven't been on the internet to be able to look at your videos or to support you. I'm going to try to get back to doing that now that I found my computer and I have internet again, and try to maintain that.
Welcome to Healthy Vegan Living, a whole food, plant-based lifestyle.
Alright, so let's go over the ingredients. Relatively simple. What I've done is I've slightly changed the recipe because when I made the buckwheat bread last time, I thought it was a little grainy. So I thought this time I would reduce the amount of buckwheat and add more flour to it. Of course, nothing ever works out perfectly, but this gives you a little bit of an idea of what I'm doing. Okay. So you need, just like before, you need water. We have osmosis system. Just use drinking water. It's 1 cup of water. You need, I'm going to be using Earth Balance as my shortening. You need 2 tablespoons of shortening. You need bread flour. So I'm using Gold Medallion. I bought it at Stater Brothers, but you can buy even bigger packages of this at Sam's Club or Costco. You need, traditionally, it's 1.5 cups of buckwheat. I'm only using 1 cup. You need 2 tablespoons of gluten. The reason why you need gluten is because buckwheat has no gluten in it, so you're offsetting it. You need 2 tablespoons of vegan brown sugar. I bought my vegan sugar at Sprouts. The difference is that regular white granulated sugar is not vegan, and this is a vegan channel, so we're using all vegan products. You need 1 teaspoon of salt. I like to use Himalayan sea salt, so we're using that. You need yeast. I'm using Fleischmann's Breadmachine, but you could also get away with using active dry yeast. Your yeast and your flour has to be current. If it's towards the end of expiration date, you're going to have problems. So you want to probably get smaller containers of bread flour, unless you're going to be making lots of breads. Then you should probably buy the larger container that you can get at Sam's Club. What I'm doing is the crust for the bread, according to the instructions, was to be number 2P for the Oster, which means medium. I thought that was really hard, so I'm going to use a light crust. And it's going to take, we're going to use the basic white cycle, which is number 1 on the Oster, and it's going to be pretty close to 3 hours and 50 minutes. So this evening, we're going to be able to have some delicious bread. Now we're going to start putting this all away, and I'm going to show you how I measure my flour and why I do it. Okay, so we're going to remove all this stuff out of the way. Read these, we can leave them off. All right. I believe what you should do is sift your flour. In other words, fluff it up and then remeasure. But much later down the line, what I'm going to start doing is weighing it. Using a scale is really the best and most accurate way to get the proper amount of flour for your breads. Whether you're making it in a bread maker or whether you're using it by hand or you're kneading it by hand, this is the correct way to do it. It's even better than sifting it and remeasuring. But we're not doing that this time. I'm going to show you what I do here. All right, so I've already placed in this battery operated sifter almost a cup and 3/4. So what it is, you just press the button. I want to let you know that this is the highlight of my day right here. And of course at the very end when I am eating my bread with butter and jam. See how easy that is? Put it down, and then we remeasure. Okay, so after we've got it sifted, now we're going to remeasure. So I'm going to put in, here's 1, 2, and we need a 2/3 cup. Because the original recipe asked for 2/3. Now 2/3. And that's basically it. Now we have our sifted bread flour. And for the buckwheat flour, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put it inside of the sifter. And we're going to remeasure. That's basically it. Now you go back and put everything back to where it was before, and step by step you put it in your bread maker. Now it's very important that if you don't have an Oster and you have a different machine, that you check your manufacturers to let you know exactly. For my example, with my machine, the first thing you put in is the water. The next thing you put in after that is all your dry ingredients. And the very last thing you do after you create a little well is you put in your yeast. Some machines are different. Some of them have the yeast in little compartments on the side and you have to follow those directions. Not all the bread makers are the same. And sometimes you might be able to find a different recipe from a different book and still make it work. You have to experiment, and that's why this works. All right, so this makes a delicious bread, and now we're going to put it together. So the first thing you do is you open your container, and you make sure that your pan is in good shape. What I always do is there's a little paddle here on the bottom, and that's what's going to be basically mixing it. I put in a very quick jab of spray olive oil. And I usually have different types of oil. And then what I do is I'm going to put it back in. And you're going to see it down here. And we're going to put it back into it. And every time I use this, right away I clean it in the sink with soapy water. Nothing really harsh to be, because this has got right now, it's like a silicone coating on the top of your pan. Once you push it in, that's it. All right, now we're going to start by putting in the water. That's 1 1/4 cup of drinking water. And then next thing we're going to do after that is put in the shortening, which is in this case vegan butter. And after the vegan butter is going to be the bread flour, which is right here. And right after that, you're going to put in the buckwheat flour, which isn't really wheat, as we all know it's herbs. And after that, you're going to put in the gluten flour, which is where? There it is. Gluten flour. After that, you're going to put in the vegan brown sugar, 2 tablespoons. Same thing, by the way, for the gluten flour. Then you're going to use 1 teaspoon of salt, Himalayan sea salt. And you're going to take your hands and you're going to make a little well, but not so far down into the water, because the yeast can't touch the water that you've already put in. You're going to put in your yeast. And that's it. That's the basic. Then you just close the lid, you press start, and I'm going to show you what you're doing next. On my machine, it's already on basic because we've been making a lot of basic breads. And then we're going to choose H is dark, L is light. We want light this time. And it's going to take 3 hours. And that's it. That's all we have to do. There's a button, start. Press start. And that's when you start seeing the dough inside of here being moved. Okay. We have to go to the basic bread feature. So at 3 minutes, the dough is kneaded for the first time, and this goes on for 10 minutes. Now what I sometimes do is the following. I lift the lid and I try to scrape the sides down. Make sure that everything is included in the ball. And it's going to do this back until that ball forms. Let's see, now we have to put this stuff back in, for example. Alright, so we do it again. Then after 10 minutes, the dough begins to rise, and that stays for 20 minutes. At 2 hours and 30 minutes, that's 15 minutes later, the dough is kneaded the second time. That's when I also check it again to make sure everything's off the sides. At 1 minute 55 seconds, the dough is punched down for 30 seconds. At the same time, the dough is risen for another 55 minutes. At 1 hour that is left, or 60 minutes, the bread begins to bake. And then the bread is finished in 3 hours total. So you open this again, make sure that everything is incorporated. Look at the dough, it's almost all completely formed with all of the ingredients almost all combined. 2 hours and 52 minutes, the dough is now put together, all combined. And now it's just getting ready to rise for 20 minutes, the first dough rise. Now the dough is gonna rise for 20 minutes. Take it to this time to be able to put away your ingredients, cleaning up your countertops, making your kitchen pretty. Bread loaf is finished. You can just simply cool it down on a cooling rack. Don't necessarily have to have one of these. It's just makes things a lot easier if you just use them. Don't forget that if you do have a cooling rack, you're going to be using oven mitts, for example. Something along this line is your metal pan from your bread machine is going to be quite hot. You don't want to burn yourself, you want to keep yourself protected. Alright, so we'll see in a little bit after I clean up this mess. It's without saying to you that you need the freshest of ingredients to have a bread that does work out. For example, this bread is going to expire April 24th of 2024. I can tell you it's going to be gone way before then. I always, and for example, as I was trying to pull out the flour, I damaged the bag. But that doesn't make any difference because I always put my bread flour in a plastic bag. This is a gallon-sized plastic bag. And then I store it in either the refrigerator or the freezer. When I first buy this from the store, it goes in the freezer for about a week. And after that, it transfers itself into, it moves itself into a refrigerator. So that's where I put all my bread flours. I don't trust the seal on these pre-packaged, like for example, the Vital Gluten. I'll show you. They have these little packages that comes with the original packaging. I don't trust those. I put them in a 1 quart freezer bag. It's got a good seal on the top. I know I can trust it. And this also sometimes goes in the refrigerator. I'll be doing a lot of baking, so I'm keeping it out for now. But this one here is going to go in the freezer. Actually, it's already been in the freezer for its cycle, so it's going to go in the refrigerator. All right, so we are still rising. It doesn't appear to have risen that much, but we're going to leave it alone, and we'll be back and we'll show you more details on the bread. See you in a little bit. Look at that, perfect. It's a complete, beautiful, well-rounded dough ball. We're right now at 2 hours and 52 minutes. So now what it's going to happen is it's going to knead for 15 minutes. And after that, the dough will continue to rise for another 20 minutes. The dough was punched down for the last time for 30 seconds. And now the dough is on its final rise for an hour. That's what it looks like, real quick. See? Okay. There. All right, so we're gonna let it rise. Hopefully it's gonna rise well, so we have a delicious 2-pound loaf. So the dough is rising. See? It's almost double the size of the original loaf. 123. Yeah. Going between so when it gets in 23 minutes, the bread will begin to bake. So right now it's just gonna rise as much as it can. And then an hour and 23 minutes from now, the bread will be finished. We can see how it turned out. All right, we'll see in a little bit. Well, we have 5 minutes left. Real quick, look. And now after that, we can't lift the lid anymore during the baking process. It's gonna take another 60 minutes to cook. Hopefully it'll stay this delicious looking bread here and we all can enjoy it soon. All right, so we'll see you in a little bit, about 60 minutes. The bread is finished. So what we're gonna do next is pull it out. Pull away the notes. What you do is you take this thing and you twist it out. Which is why you have 2 of these things. We're going to close that part, pull this forward, and then what you're going to do, you're just going to pat this down and flip it upside down. Now with our breads in the past, you see, they all come out, and you can see the bottom piece is on the bottom right here, and there's a little bit of bread on the bottom, but it'll be easy enough to clean. Now, the way I look at it is my loaf is delicious looking. It's got a beautiful brown topping, and it looks exactly what I would expect a beautiful bread loaf to look like. People do get upset about this loaf, but I never do because I know it's fresh, it's delicious, it has no preservatives, and even though this is a 22 slice bread, let me tell you, that's gonna make probably 8 slices for us. Okay, so I'm gonna let it cool a little bit, then Linda and I will have a slice, we'll show you, and we'll see you in a few minutes. All right, so while this bread cools, gotta unplug this, that's what this means. So you don't forget it, it gives you just simply turn on the water, put this in the sink, and just kind of wash it down with mild. And not this side though, this is the type of sponge that doesn't leave any scratches. Just kind of like wash the side down, not very hot right now, and get the rest of the bread off from the spindle. Usually you see little crumbs on the bottom. Once you see that your seal is nice and shiny, you know it's ready. Alright, and then you just simply wipe it down. Now what we normally do is wait about half an hour with the bread, which is usually irresistible. And then we cut into it. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we finally got the bread out and it's cooled down, and we're going to use a bread knife. Linda, you want a nice thick slice? Of course you do. We're gonna check the bread crumb on it. And you can see it's a very nice and soft crumb, which not what we had our first time we made this. Linda,
I
you
like
want
that texture better.
Yeah, you want to
Good to see.
cut it this way? It's pretty much square, so. You want to toast it or what?
I guess. Go ahead and mix it nice.
Okay, well I made a mistake. I made myself a giant piece and then a minuscule piece. I'll cut you some more later.
Thanks.
First I'm going to test it without anything on it. And I think making the crust on the outside of the bread on the lighter side rather than on the medium side worked better for me. So this is a win. We're going to save the recipe in our book so we can make it again for ourselves. This is exactly, I'm not really worried that it caved in a little bit over here on the very top. I am never worried when my bread caves in as long as it tastes good. Thanks a lot for watching us. And we look forward to seeing you in our next video. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
What we're going to do, scoop it in very carefully, and put it back into the bowl. We just pulled it out. Can't do that because it's right there.
If you like what you see, subscribe. And if you like this video, give us a thumbs up.